Recording?
Yes.
Got it. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Great Trees Zen Women's Temple. This morning, our speaker is Dr. Liliane Myoren Papin, and I know that we've heard her before, and we love her, and she is a friend and longtime member of Great Tree. So, first, I would like to have someone do our opening sutra, please.
Unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having to see and listen to, remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's teaching.
And now, a brief statement about dana. In Buddhism, when Zen practitioners share their understanding of the teachings and the practice, it is offered freely as a practice of Danaparamita. Dana is a Pali word that means generosity or to give freely, and this practice is done without expectation of getting something in return. This is the spirit of speaking about the Dharma. Other ways to practice dana is to offer support to those who share the teachings, to support places of spiritual practice, and to give without judgment or expectation when opportunities arise. Those who share their teachings at Great Tree do so on a dana basis. Please support their practice by giving what you can. And Liliane, do you have a place you would like your dana to go to?
Great tree.
All right, so then we could go to greattreetemple.org and take the donate path. Dr. Liliane Myoren Papin is a Franco-American writer and teacher of Chinese medicine, which she describes as an ecological medicine particularly suited to our times. She practices and teaches acupuncture, herbology, Qigong, and dietary therapy. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So, as usual, I wish to share my screen. Here we go, and we go to slideshow. Play from start. As it's the second time it's happening, it's kind of interesting because in the morning I just did. I mean, it's afternoon for me. And in the morning, I did this presentation for a webinar in France, more fleshed out because there's a bit more time, but basically it's the same theme. So, and I do it in French in the morning and in English with you this afternoon. So, winter pays for a warm heart, and I wish for us to navigate the poetry of the month and season in this December, which of course is going to be also winter, the official. So let's look at December at home. I always say at home because let's not forget we are not all the earth. Some people are going through spring on the other half of the earth. So anyway, for us, even in France, I have the same home as you do, and it's a good time to remember the yin and yang symbol because we are in the dark part, in the yin part, and we're coming to the point on December 22nd exactly with the solstice, where the little yang is going to start growing. All right. So right now it's still the yin filling in the whole half here, but 22nd we go the other way. So December, unlike what we saw in November, is a very busy month at home. It's the end of fall and beginning of winter in the solar calendar, and we'll come back to that. It's the last month of the year, which means it's a completion of a cycle, and that has its importance. Even if we tend to think, we're above all that, or we don't pay much attention, or it's not important, these cycles, and including the social construct of time that we have, really plays a big part on our psyche. So, and we know we have many deadlines, you know, for the end of the year. So it is the completion of a cycle, the cycle of 1 year. The new moon is going to be on December 13, and the full moon on December 27th. So just at the time of Christmas. As you know, the full moon is not, I mean, there's one day, like 27th is really going to be the full moon, but the energy of the full moon covers a few days on each side. So roughly a week, there's kind of that energy of the full moon going toward it and then going away from it. So as you see, December 27th will be very close to it, going toward it. So what that means, what we can already put in our little bank of knowledge is that it's going to be a very intense time. And full moon is water time. Winter is water time, also in Taoist tradition. So that means it's communication. So it can be great for communication, or it can be a disaster. Either way, but for sure, very intense, okay? The winter solstice is going to be December 22nd, right? So a very charged time. And that's, you know, when we reverse, when we go toward the young again, you know, growing time. We have Christmas, and whether we celebrate it or not, whether we're into it or not, again, it's not to be underestimated, because it does color life. And as you know, it does color certainly commercial life, has already started from Black Friday to whatever, and all of December. Hanukkah is a Jewish celebration. It's not a traditional celebration, not a biblical one, just like Christmas is not a biblical celebration. There's no Christmas date in the Bible or in the New Testament or anywhere. So Hanukkah, it's the same. It's something that has built over time. It refers to the restoration of the Temple of Jerusalem, and it's called also the Festival of Lights. So, and it is said that a miracle happened, and that oil that was supposed to sustain one candle actually sustained candles for a whole week. We also have this month's New Year's Eve, because that's when it's celebrated. It starts in December on the 31st. We have also, whether it's in the States or in France or in the Western world, Christmas vacation. And that too is not to be, especially I would say in France, I'm very, very aware of that, but I think it's the same everywhere. But what that means is many people go on vacation, and meaning the children are at home. So the whole family rhythm is different, which can also create some interesting challenges, good and bad. Then we have the more of a commercial, but still there, the Advent, meaning the beginning of, you know, the waiting for Christmas, which is also in the form of lighting, traditionally lighting a candle each Sunday before Christmas. So a very, very busy month, both on the cosmic level and in our social level. So where does Christmas come from? I'm sure many of you know, but it's just a quick survey of that. It's always good to remember. The closest that it comes from is the Saturnalia, which is a Roman celebration. And the Saturnalia came from Saturn, which is the god of renewal, cycles of birth and death. And offerings were made to Saturn to have good harvests. Now, the Saturnalia, well, I'll come back to that later. Toward the end of the 4th century, that's when, though it's pretty late, when the date of December 25th was chosen for Christmas. Basically, what the church did, as it did in many occasions, was because there was another very popular, beside the Saturnalia, which lasted about a week. There was a very popular celebration called Mitra, a solar god, and that's when the Brumalia, and that's when peasants and common people, let's say, although I don't really like that term, but anyway, peasants and people liked that celebration. It was very important in in their life. So, and the solstice happened to be the high point of the Brumalia, which is a harvest festival in honor of Bacchus. Bacchus, who is the god of harvesting, and in particular, harvest of grapes, and the god of wine. Okay. Then we have Yule. Yule is a Celtic tradition, very old, predating the Saturnalia, predating all of them, and tradition of the return of light. There was also a big festival all over Europe of Sol Invictus. Sol Invictus means unconquered sun. So who was a syncretic god of all the solar cults and celebrations, Brumalia, Yule. So as you can see, we're not going to go into details in any of those, of course, but you can see that they do have, including with Christmas, a common theme of resurrection after death. So of course, it's also the solstice. The sun is coming back, because after all, we can be very sophisticated, but there's no guarantee that just because it's happened very regularly that it will continue to do so. So it is, okay, this year again. What is interesting too in the Saturnalia, it was a bit like Fat Tuesday, meaning that it was a very rioty time. The Romans were good for that, especially during the decadent part. But what was interesting in that part is that there was a reversal of roles. Like slaves could be kings and emperors for a few days. Emperors, on the contrary, or aristocrats has to serve. Servants became the head of the house, and so on. So in those traditions, what you see, it's a reminder. That's how I see it anyway. Because when, for example, conquerors came back with lots of slaves, and, you know, after looting and many things, they were celebrated and honored and came back with thousands of slaves. But there was a slave next to the conqueror, to the winner, saying, remember that you are mortal. So meaning that things can change at any time. You can be on top of the world at 1 minute, and you can be dead the next. Or, you know, in this life, you can be an important person and be a beggar in the next one. So that is a reminder of impermanence and how the social order can always change. And of course, it was especially true with all those invasions and wars, because you indeed had everything possible one day, and the next day you became a slave and had nothing left. A bit like refugees today. You know, when we say refugee, we tend to think of it as a status, and we tend to forget that there are people who just before were, you know, bakers, doctors, and suddenly they lose an identity and become a number as refugee in refugee camps. So same with immigration. So we do have that, same theme of you never know what is going to change in your life. And some of the rituals, you don't have that quite in the US, but in France we have, you see that cake? It's a traditional Christmas cake in the form of a log. And that comes directly from Yule, the Celtic tradition, where a huge log was burned into a chimney, but that would last a long time. And so that tradition, that decadent tradition of a very sugary, buttery, heavy, unhealthy cake, that came with the bourgeois cooking of the 19th century that thought that going into the woods to find a real log was a bit too much and preferred to make a cake instead. So, and we still have that cake. So one of the things that Didier and I do is we offer a healthy version of that cake every year. So what are the symbols of this season? Of course, we have the fir tree. So that's, resilience, green in the middle of winter. Poinsettia, I think you say that like that. This red flower, this fire in the midst of winter. We have holly, which, the name is interesting, the holly, and the mistletoe, which are plants, we'll see them in a moment, but plants that have that same quality of enduring in the winter. We also have candles and lights. And so you can see that the common theme of all those celebrations is the renewal of life, the restoration of light, the hope for another year of light. So it's a month of paradox because it's a month of promise, light, and waiting. Okay. In terms of the lunar calendar, winter has already begun since November 4th, right? But of course, we still have long months of cold ahead, even if we are with, warming climate change. At this point, we still have winter, and like here, it's pretty cold this year so far for beginning of winter. And it's not the end, it's just the beginning. So there is a promise of the return of the sun, but at the same time, we need resilience because it's not going to come right away. There's something deep stirring underneath. So keep all of that in mind because that applies to nature and to us. We are nature. Nature is us. So that deep stirring underneath is happening in us. There's an inner movement underneath outer stillness. In Chinese medicine and Taoism, it corresponds to water energy, which is the energy of kidney bladder, the deepest source of energy. And bladder also has the aspect of purification of water, letting go of the water that is either polluted, toxic, or unnecessary. Okay, so the deepest source of energy, and of course we are made of water, so those deep currents that cross the oceans and affect the climate of the globe are also in us. So here what I'm writing is the importance of holiday preparation, unavoidable. And if there's anything important that I'd like to convey maybe is this, because whatever we think, again, on a conscious level, remember that winter is the unconscious. So by definition, I like to remind people when they talk about their unconscious and emotion, they say, well, the particularity of the unconscious is that it is not conscious. So we're not necessarily aware at a conscious level what is going on. And we are all affected by those celebrations, whether we quote unquote believe in them or not, celebrate like them, dislike them. We are all in that rhythm. So as a therapist and, in acupuncture and Chinese medicine to this day, I have learned over time that especially when people have a chronic disease, which in Chinese medicine, that means the kidneys are involved. As soon as something is chronic, the kidneys need attention. So when you work with people, and all therapists, including doctors, everybody knows that, you work with people, and especially with chronic diseases, you manage to get to a certain point, they're happy, you are happy, because things are better, symptoms maybe are gone or much better. And it has been the most difficult thing for me to accept that I would say in 95% of cases, and I don't even know, I never looked at numbers, but I would say roughly 95% of cases, there's a regression. When people come back after the holidays, they're worse. They have, they have let go of the diet they were managing, if it's diet, or they've let go of quote unquote eating well. They've let go of whatever practice was going well. And they come back and there's a whole array of symptoms that are definitely post-holidays, stomach aches and intestinal diseases, gastroenteritis, and it's not being, it's kind of a damper, but I think that it's better to know that that's the way it goes, and therefore anticipate it and be ready. So be ready, what does it mean on a very concrete physical level? It means preparing healthy snacks and desserts so that when we are invited, we can bring something healthy and have some of it, okay? Make sure you ban sodas, especially for young people. We have a disease today that's called fat liver disease. And it's a disease that actually is really on the rise, and it's sometimes called the soda disease in young people. So offer healthy alternatives, find sugar alternatives in your recipes. Coconut sugar, it's not perfect, but coconut sugar will not create a sugar spike for diabetics, for example. Agave syrup, barley malt, dates, all of that can be better alternatives. You can, rather than, coffee or chocolate, sometimes have chai tea. There's also the Indian tradition that's called gold milk that can be made with vegetal milk. Kombucha, that can be a way of partaking of, champagne celebration. You have the bubbles in the glass, or apple cider. Basically, you get it, but it's really important, I think, given what I see as a therapist, that it's important to anticipate and not think that we are above that. The image is, we think that we're going to cross all of that in our little boat. We're going to row the boat gently down the stream, but we forget sometimes that Christmas and New Year, there's a craziness that gets hold of society, commercial, and consumerism, and it's so powerful that sometimes our little boat cannot quite take it. We are taken by the current, and when we're on the other side, is, oh my God, hangover and headache, and there we go. So by all means, let's anticipate and be ready. I think that's a big message of to me of December, is that promise of the sun and then the stirring underneath. Obviously, we are thirsting for light. We are thirsting for a certain sweetness. We've had the fall behind us. We have long winter. So yes, the promise of light. How do we honor it? How do we welcome it? So that's how do we honor that life? How are we going to bring back light into our life? So first of all, it's a little bit different than the fall. We are more into the honoring of our ancestors. I think that the Indian thinking of 7 generations and placing oneself in the cycle of transmission, giving meaning to our place and life. Where is my place in the transmission? How can I contribute to preserve water and yin? Because winter is yin energy, the deepest yin energy, the deepest water energy. Do I have to offer plastic toys? I mean, we can conjugate it in many ways that pollute the oceans. How can I help? How can we help young people, grandchildren? How can we gently encourage them? And how do we transmit what we know to be healthy, for example, or good? How do we manage? And I know, of course, Great Tree is doing that, with family meditation and all of that. How can we find a way to transmit? And how do we honor those who gave us so much? And how do we balance, manage, avoid stimulants, anticipate situations, look squarely in the eyes of our weaknesses, whether it's sugar, alcohol, chocolate, champagne, coffee, meat, foie gras, heaviness, dullness, whatever makes us heavy and takes us away from the light and spirit in the end. So metal is lung energy and water energy. So we say that lung is the superior reservoir of water, and water the lower reservoir of water. Cloud and earth, that's what lung and kidneys are. Cloud and ocean, water. So let's see if we can do everything more quietly, like our great teacher Thich Nhat Hanh taught us. How can we breathe deep into the dantian, the lower abdomen, in our kidneys? And how can we nourish young energy through yin? That means walks, contemplation, giving. What part can we give to that yearning for life? It's a great time for hibernation. It's a great time for dream practice. So staying in bed a bit longer and dreaming is actually great for our kidney energy. Resting, waiting, patience, trust. It's also a good time to let go of unnecessary obligations, let go of pretense, let's just be. Because if we look at nature, it's naked. We're all naked at this time. We are raw. We are at our most vulnerable and probably the least mentally aware. Things are happening unconsciously, deep in our dreams. There's a very deep stirring in our soul, in our spirit. So, and of course, December in particular is an emphasis on completion. What we have to finish before beginning so that we can welcome something new. There's inside us, outside of our mental constructs, outside of our awareness, there is actually an internal alchemical transmutation, getting us ready for the next phase, whatever that next phase is. If the next phase is death, our body at some level knows it. So hibernation is a way of letting, animals, they do that. They totally espouse that internal alchemical transmutation of what is going on underneath the surface. So that some important treatment principles in acupuncture, in Chinese medicine. First great principle, warm kidney. The pathogen of the kidneys is the cold. So no cold drinks, okay? No, please, no ice in any drinks. Bring back the fire into the kidney. So any practice of massage, exercise, that brings back the fire into the kidney. Second great principle, nourish yin, moisten lung and kidney, hydrate dryness. Hydrate dryness, take it any way you like. It's hydrate dryness physically, but also dryness emotionally. Third great principle, calm the mind, nourish the Shen. The Shen is a spirit. Cultivate inner light. So Qigong has some yoga too. It's a good time to take care of our feet. Reflexology, foot massage, salt foot baths. As you know, we don't sleep well when feet are cold. And the kidney meridian goes through the feet. So that means we need to be grounded literally in the winter in order to bring back the energy inside. Here I put 3 points on our wrist that are good points to calm the spirit. If we bring back the energy inside our kidneys, that's also a good way to preserve our knees and ankles and reinforce our vital energy. So let's look quickly at a couple of plants. So the holy plant, just like we saw with chrysanthemum, look at that plant. I mean, isn't that ready for winter? And is it surprising that it's good for the immune system? It's one of the herbalists like those plants that are both poison and remedy. So it's a protective plant, good for fevers. Now, the fruit is toxic, but the leaves and the twigs are medicinal. Because it resists to fire and lightning, it was used as a good luck charm. When you look at holly, it's also very interesting. You will see that inside a bush of holly, there's kind of like a hole. And the hole surrounded by the holly plant is a great refuge for birds and, would say the legends, for fairies. Of course, humans made holly wine from holly. So with 1 tablespoon of little twigs and leaves, 2 minutes of gentle boil, and 10 minutes infusion. So that's basically a tea, a holly tea. The Druids and the Celts, for them, it was one of the 7 sacred trees. And because it holds on to oaks and it can go over 300 years. So it's a great plant. And in the backflower remedies, which can be a good one for the holidays, it's a remedy that's good for strong emotions of anger, rage, hate, envy, jealousy, deep fear. So basically anything that interferes with the flow of love and gratitude for the end of the cycle, for what has been given. Mistletoe was not so popular among the Catholics because it was considered in the pagan tradition as an aphrodisiac, and it means immortal life. It was called a plant that heals all diseases. What is interesting is that in Germany and Switzerland, they are currently studying that plant for its effects on cancer. So what's seen as a plant of vitality, aphrodisiac, so good for fertility. It was also a sacred plant in the Celtic tradition. The fruit is also toxic, but the leaves and twigs again are the remedy. It's a semi-parasite plant, so sometimes called extraterrestrial because it has no root. That's why it's in the trees, but it can still process its own photosynthesis. All right. So it was used for many things: convulsions, cough, chest diseases, spasms, hyperactivity to calm the spirit, and a kidney tonic. All the winter plants, of course, are kidney tonics. One of my favorite here, because it's a Taoist plant that's often mentioned in ancient texts, is the pine nut, songzu, a longevity food, and that moistens, nourishes lung and kidney yin, good for the lung, liver, and kidney, stops cough, deeply hydrating and nourishing. And little recipes, if you want to make a gentle, healthy winter recipe, is to mix it in equal parts with walnuts and sesame. They are also kidney tonics. The problem with pine nuts is that it goes rancid easily. So it's better to buy it in package unless you know for sure there's a high turnover, because it goes rancid easily. And it's a longevity food among Mongolian people and northern steppes people in Russia. And my mother told me that when she was a little girl, her mother, she lived alone with her mother, and her mother was very poor. And so, of course, they would try to get advantage of everything they could get free. And they would go in the suburb of the city where it was the countryside, and they would, pick nettle to make soup, or dandelion to make soup, and they would come back with pine nuts. We can get our pine nut, pine nuts. So they would come back with the pine nut, and then they would put it on the stove, because you could do that in a chimney with something to keep the pine nuts when they burst out. So basically, once the pine nut here bursts, then the pine nuts come out. And she said she loved those moments because there was a ritual of going into the cold, getting the pine cones, and then making the fire and getting the pine nuts. So that's a nice little ceremony or little ritual that you could do at Great Tree. I could just see it in your chimney there. Other winter treasures for the kidney: cinnamon, clove, goji, sesame seeds, lily bulb that you can find in Asian stores, St. John's wort, lemon balm, verbena, linden, chamomile. All of the quieting the mind are great at this time of year. Essential oils, same thing. I'm not going to go too much into that because I think you've heard them several times now. But basically, it's a good time to check your emergency kitchen and your emergency pharmacy. Make sure you have what you need, not only for yourself, but for people who might get sick, the grandkids who might get sick at the holiday season, too much chocolate. And I have a memory when probably I was 6 or 7 years old of getting really sick. I almost died, actually. And I knew in my mind that it was linked to chocolate consumption. Everybody had brought me chocolate. My birthday is close to Christmas. And I had eaten lots of it, and probably was, not enough of other things. And I got so sick. So children do get sick. adults too. So it's good to check, what do we have? What remedies do we have? What essential oils do we have to calm? Like tangerine is great for children too. And you know, essential oils generally, they're not so good for children, but there are a few like vanilla, tangerine, orange. Those can be used diluted with oil to calm. You know, you put that on the back, on the spine, and that's great to calm them down, or on the feet also. So seaweeds are also great. Beans, they have an affinity. They look like kidneys. So in the theory of signature, they're great for kidneys. So bean soups are fantastic. Winter vegetables, root vegetables, and our hardy greens, watercress, water, lotus seed, lotus, all of those that grow in water in particular are very good. Important too, we say in Chinese medicine that kidney open to ears. So the fall lung is more about the voice, but the lung is the mother of kidney. So that means the voice need now in winter to be heard. So it's an important time to listen to ourselves, but listen also especially to others. It's a good time to reinvent storytelling, you know, long-term memory, to inscribe oneself in a lineage like we saw. A time for legends and myths, for music and singing. Water is vibration and communication with the inner ear, to take literally, intuition, resonance. So for example, I'm thinking that, you know, with young people, it can be very challenging nowadays to get them away from their cell phones. I mean, and adults too, if it was only young people. But so how can we come back, you know? And I think that a good way is to listen. Invite people to tell stories about their elder, their family, their childhood. It's a good time for that. And to resist giving advice and just listen. What is it like to be young today? What is it like in your school? How is your class? What are your problems? You know, and I did that recently with a nephew of mine. I asked him out to lunch for his birthday, and I had made the decision that I was going to refrain from playing the aunt, you know, with advice and all my wisdom, and that I was just listen to him. And it was really amazing. First of all, he didn't see the time go, and so, you know, he didn't look at the time to say, okay, well, I need to go. And he talked and he told me so much, and I learned so much, because the world has changed. It's not the same as when I was growing up. So lots of the difficulties that young people are encountering are totally new to me. And I refrained from advice. Just at one point, I say, because he changes his mind a lot. So I said, may I ask you a challenging question? And he said, yes. I said, aren't you afraid that this new project maybe is yet another one that's going to burn quickly out? And he said, oh, I see how you could see that, but no, I don't think so. And he continued. I said, fine. I didn't come back to that topic. And that was a good lesson for me, because I think we all suffer from the tendency to advise. I know Tejo is really very good for that. She does not give advice. She listens. She's really good at listening. I've had that experience a few times. So let's do that. Listen with our inner ear. It's a good time to sleep and dream. Take time for that. If you have a dream practice, dream journaling, now is the time. And you can reread them anytime in the spring or whatever. We don't always see the symbolism the imagery right away. And let's marvel at what animals do. Isn't that something? How the animal world has that pulse with winter. Good time to ground ourselves, contemplate what has been achieved and what remains to be done. It's a good time for purification, for clearing the air. And of course, sometimes in conflicts, we can't always talk to people with whom we would like to talk. And if we can't solve them with a person because it's not safe or it won't work, we can at least write a letter and then burn it in the fire to let go and make room for something new, even though we might not know how it's going to happen and might not happen right away or the way we envision. But let go of the mental construct, make room for a new direction. And of course, it's a great time for the practice of listening and silence. If we are in nature, you probably have noticed that the winter air is very special. Water energy, it's what carries sound, vibration. So sound is very pure in winter. That's why, we sing carols also. It resonates in the cold. There's a resonance that's different. So let's be attuned also to that resonance of winter. And let's not forget, I left the word in English, in French, emotions of winter. Thank God you can understand. So, and let's be humble. We are little children, afraid of fear, of cold, of getting sick, of our loved one getting sick. Lots of people die in the winter. And we actually, January 1st is the day where there is the most death. And of course, there's the season, but I think also the fact that we go counter the energy of winter. It's a time where we need to practice embers, not a full-flown fire, like a big burning fire, a gentle ember, what we need to get in a chimney. So it's a time to develop our resilience in order not to get sick, to avoid what weakens us, what weakens our resistance. And usually we know the danger is toxicity, hyperactivity. We need to go for the long term. We have long months ahead of us. So basically, we need to get the fire of love, the fire of the heart, which is the energy of the heart, with the quality of discernment. And discernment in Chinese medicine is small intestine, which goes with the heart. Small intestine is where blood gets transmuted, where food becomes our blood. And it needs to separate the pure from the impure. And we need to be able to do that in our life, and especially in the winter. So again, it's not meant at all to dampen, because, the fact that death, and it's, they're saying in the studies that it's not very clear. They don't know what causes that peak, because you can think of road accidents, of course, but it's true in all categories, disease and everything. And so, of course, many old people do die at that time. And there's also, again, that frenzy that really weakens our immunity. Let's remember the holy, and, see the thickness that it develops, the resistance. And so let's take care of ourselves, our loved ones, the best we can by listening and nudging each other along the way, supporting our little boats so that we don't get drawn by that huge current of consumerism that that Christmas and the holidays have become, and the drinking and the drugs, and that all that unfortunate lack of spirit that is, that takes place, of that yearning in us that is awakened by the solstice, the return of light. Let's take it seriously. How can we make it happen in our lives? What is meaningful to us? Not necessarily what we do every time, all the time, because that's what we do. Is there something else we'd like to do? Is there a yearning? How do we want to return and celebrate the light of life, the light in us? With whom? How? Alone? Whatever. But let's give ourselves that space and time to celebrate love, friendship, serenity, dreams, and with gentleness, that gentle amber state of the fire. And voila. So of course, I'm always, right in the time. So, but if you have any comments, questions, please, would love to hear from you all.
Liliane, thank you for giving us permission to hibernate. I like that.
Isn't that great? Yes.
Yeah. Slowing down.
See, Lorna? Yeah. Yeah. You see, Lorna, I was telling you, she just shared with me at the beginning she had overslept this morning. I was like, great. And it's true what I shared with you. It's so sad to see so many people doing well. And then, I say, okay, see you on the other sides of the holidays. And then they come back and it's like, okay, all right, we need to start all over. I can't tell you. And again, it's not me. All therapists know that. Doctors know that. They have that in the hospitals. They everywhere. So that really tells us something, right? About being out of sync with the energy of that season.
We just started sesshin last night, Rohatsu, and I remember when I first came here and I wanted to do Rohatsu sesshin. So many people said, "Oh no, we're too busy at that time. We can't come," and it really made it very clear to me how important it is to do Rohatsu.
Oh my God, that's the best. Actually, I wish I was there. I wish.
Well, you can join online.
It's a gift. Yeah, online with time difference is a bit hard.
Yeah.
It's a bit hard. But yeah, it's the best. I mean, silence, practice, that's the best. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just can feel the energy revving up since Black Friday. Probably over
Yeah, we
there.
can't escape it. We can't escape it, and we need to
It's the whole
take
world too.
Yeah.
That's the thing, Liliane told us last time that they don't celebrate Thanksgiving in France, but they celebrate Black Friday.
Yeah.
That says a lot. They probably celebrate it all over the world.
And we need time also to process our grief, with the world, like the war, all the wars in Israel and Palestine and in Ukraine. I mean, we need to quiet and be able to give our heart and think, where do I stand? What can I do even in my little world? How can I contribute to more peace, more love? We all have things we can offer.
Yeah, at the beginning of the fall, I was thinking about all the things that I had to do this fall. And then you told us now's the time to kind of become more quiet and relax and rest. And so my mind said, okay, I'm going to do these things with a relaxed mind. But now we just started Rohatsu, and I noticed that my mind and body are really on, have really speeded up. It's very interesting to sort of think of these things in terms of the year, and in terms of how we're affected by the energy. Thank you very much for.
You're welcome. My pleasure. And it's a good reminder for me too when I do those, of course,
Yeah, you
And
don't
we
get
need to-
obsessive about telling us to relax.
That's right. And in an interesting thing too is as we get older, our kidneys get weaker. So that means the fire can burn more easily, meaning the adrenals can take over more easily. We have less stability in the kidney. So it takes more and more practice and more quiet. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess we're up to the hour, so let's give back the merit. May the merit of this practice
May the merit of this practice
benefit all beings
benefit all beings
and bring peace.
and
bring peace.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Enjoy your
rest.
session.
Thank you.